I'm 100 years old. I say that out loud sometimes just to hear how it sounds. 100. Most people don't get this far, and those who do usually don't talk much about it. There isn't a celebration left in it. Mostly there's a quiet, heavy awareness that everything you thought you had time for has either happened already or never will. I'm not angry about being old. My body aches, yes, and my hearing goes in and out, and some mornings I forget why I stood up in the first place. But that isn't the hard part. The hard part is the silence that followed me here. The things I kept inside because it felt safer. The words I swallowed because I thought there would be another chance to say them later. There wasn't. I live alone now, not in a tragic way, just in the way things end up when you outlive almost everyone who once knew you well. The house is quiet, but it's not empty. It's full of memories that don't make noise anymore. Old chairs, faded photos, objects that still remember hands that haven't touched them in decades. I'm telling you this because I don't have much time left, and I don't want these thoughts to die with me. I'm not trying to teach anyone a lesson. I'm just finally saying what I should have said long ago. When you're young, silence feels like maturity. It feels like restraint. You think you're being careful, considerate, strong. You think holding your tongue makes you less of a burden to others. You think you're choosing peace. What you're often choosing is distance. I didn't grow up with much. We didn't talk about feelings in my family. You worked. You showed up. You didn't complain. Love was something you demonstrated by staying, not by speaking. My father wasn't cruel, but he was quiet. My mother loved deeply, but she expressed it through meals and folded laundry, not words. So I learned early that what mattered most didn't need to be said, or so I thought. In my 20s, I was busy trying to build a life that looked respectable. I worked hard. I took pride in being reliable. People knew they could count on me. That mattered to me. I liked being the steady one, the person who didn't rock the boat. There was a woman back then. Her name doesn't matter anymore. She laughed easily and spoke her mind in a way that made me nervous. She would ask me what I was thinking, and I would tell her whatever seemed harmless enough to share. I loved her. I know that now. At the time, I told myself it was something quieter, something practical. I never said the word out loud to her, not because I didn't feel it, but because I didn't want to risk changing the shape of what we had. I thought silence would protect us. She waited longer than she should have. I see that now, too. Eventually, she stopped asking questions that should have frightened me, but instead I felt relieved. Fewer chances to say the wrong thing. One day she told me she was leaving. She wasn't angry. That was the worst part. She said she needed someone who would meet her where she was, not halfway and not years later. I nodded. I wished her well. I didn't stop her. I told myself that if it was meant to be, she would come back. I told myself I'd speak up next time. There were many next times. I married in my 30s. She was kind and practical and understood my silences as a form of stability. We built a life together that looked good from the outside. Children, routine, responsibility I provided. I showed up. I did what was expected of me. What I didn't do was speak when something mattered to me. I didn't say when I was afraid. I didn't say when I felt small. I didn't say when I was proud of her or grateful or overwhelmed by how much I loved my children. I assumed they knew. That assumption followed me everywhere. Life doesn't announce the moments that will matter later. It disguises them as ordinary days. a child wanting to show you something while you're tired, a spouse trying to talk when you're preoccupied, a friend calling when you don't feel like being on the phone. I told myself there would be time tomorrow. There was always tomorrow, until there wasn't. My children grew up the way children do, slowly, and then all at once. They became adults who had their own lives, their own responsibilities. They visited, they called, but something subtle had already been set in place. We loved each other, but we didn't know how to talk about it. When my wife got sick, I stayed by her side. I held her hand. I managed the logistics. I did everything right in the practical sense. What I didn't do was tell her all the things I had rehearsed silently for years. I kept thinking I'd say them when she was stronger, or calmer, or when I found the right words. She died on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the room getting coffee. I never said them. Grief is strange. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just settles into you and rearranges the furniture of your mind. The house feels different even when nothing has moved. After she was gone, I started noticing how much of my life had been shaped by what I chose not to say. Friendships that faded without conflict, opportunities that passed quietly, apologies that stayed trapped behind pride. None of it felt dramatic at the time. That's the dangerous part. Silence rarely announces itself as a mistake. It feels reasonable, polite, safe. Years went by. Fewer phone calls, fewer visits. People my age started disappearing. First occasionally, then regularly. You begin attending more funerals than weddings. You start recognizing that the circle is closing. In my 90s, I began talking to myself more, not because I was lonely in the usual way, but because there were still things inside me that wanted to be heard, even if it was too late for the people they were meant for. I would sit in the evening and remember conversations that never happened, words I almost said, moments I replayed with different endings. I don't beat myself up about it. I understand why I was the way I was. Silence was how I survived. It was how I stayed steady in a world that often felt uncertain. But survival and living are not the same thing. There was a moment not long ago when one of my grandchildren asked me what I regretted most. Children have a way of asking things plainly, without realizing how heavy the answer might be. I surprised myself by answering honestly. I told them I regretted how often I stayed quiet when my heart was full. They looked confused. To them, regret meant mistakes, accidents, obvious failures, not quiet dinners, not unsent letters, not words swallowed and forgotten. That's when I realized how invisible this kind of loss is until it's too late. You don't notice it accumulating. You don't feel it in your body right away. It grows slowly like dust in a house you still live in. One day you look around and realize how much has settled. If I could speak to the version of myself who thought silence was safer, I wouldn't scold him. I would understand him. But I would tell him that saying what matters doesn't always make things harder. Sometimes it makes them real. I'm not talking about grand speeches or dramatic confessions. I'm talking about simple truths. I love you. I'm scared. You matter to me. I'm sorry. I'm proud of you. Words like that don't lose their value from being spoken. They lose it from being withheld. I don't know who will hear this. I don't know what stage of life you're in. Maybe you're young and busy. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're afraid of disrupting something that feels stable enough. All I can tell you is what it feels like to reach the end, carrying so many unsaid things. It feels heavy in a way that doesn't go away. You start realizing that the people you wanted to speak to are no longer available to hear you. And no amount of understanding yourself changes that. Acceptance comes eventually. Not peace, exactly, but a kind of quiet acknowledgement. This is how my life unfolded. This is the shape it took. There is still gratitude here. I had a long life. I had love even when I didn't name it. I had moments of connection that mattered. But I also had so many chances to speak that I let it pass. If this means something to you, sit with it. You don't have to act immediately. Just notice the moments when silence feels easier than honesty. Those moments add up. I don't have many days left. I can feel that in my bones. I'm not afraid of dying. I've made peace with that. What I wish I had made peace with sooner was my own voice. When I stop talking, that will be the end of it. No more chances to clarify. No more opportunities to say what I meant. So I'm saying it now, while I still can. Silence kept me safe, but it also kept me apart. And that's the truth I'm leaving behind.